What is up, guys? Fado82 coming at you with a video on ethics and morality in Rust. I was going to delete this footage. I don't typically show offline raids. I do end up recording a lot of them because you never know how it's going to turn out. And last night I saw this group rolling out, so I started recording hoping it would turn into an online raid or something that was really abnormal, but it ended up being a straightforward offline raid with a skirmish with some smaller players up in the hills, which I thought that footage was cool, but I decided to keep the footage and show you guys something you hate, which is an offline raid, but I wanted to talk about ethics and morality in Rust because I think that's something that underlies a lot of these impassioned pleas we see on Reddit, where people are demanding that the game be played differently or that the developers respond. And let's start off by just defining some terms. And in terms of ethics and morality, that's going to depend on where you're coming from, basically. So for the philosophical sense, they really mean the same thing. It's about what's good or bad, right or wrong. And philosophers generally use the terms interchangeably, despite what a lot of people think. Philosophers don't really give a fuck too much about the terms in that sense. There's not really an agreed upon distinction in the philosophical community, and ethics generally in philosophy is just the study of morality, which is standards of conduct and how one ought to act. So when is the distinction made? And it's typically in the popular culture when things get out there. And as you look at some screenshots of my Rust Legacy experience, which I'll talk about in a moment, ethics is probably for Rust considered like it is in the popular realm. Standards of conduct or behavior that's imposed by an outside presence, group, profession, larger society, or in this sense it would be the Rust community or the game developers. If you play on a modded server, that you may have ethical considerations up the ass, so make sure you read the rules, but in vanilla Rust there are no developer imposed ethics. They do exist and they're player made, but not developer imposed. And this will vary from group to group, tribe to tribe, clan to clan, whatever you want. Some clans might not be down with offline raiding like this one is, and in that case they have a different sense of ethics, which is their group behavior. Now morality is something a little bit different. That's one's own personal sense of what is right or wrong. It's not governed by an outside authority. It's not imposed by anyone, even the group. It's one's concept. It's what they think is right or wrong. So I think that's also a term people use. It's a bit wishy-washy in Rust, and Rust is often said, or it's the subtext of these posts, that it's an amoral community, that it lacks a moral compass, that it's unconcerned with the rightness or wrongness of whatever they consider to be, right or wrong. And I think that the Rust community is used too loosely. I think the Rust player base are the people actively playing the game, and they care about furthering their group, they care about their own survival, and they're not concerned with a greater good for the servers typically. A lot of servers can view larger groups as cancerous, and it does oftentimes appear that way, and servers would do good to self-regulate the larger groups and understand that if they do break apart, it does make things a little bit more fun. But there's no way to dictate players without imposing arbitrary systems, so a lot of things that are proposed about making group sizes limited or having clan-specific servers is really just silly, because the groups would just, even if they were broken into smaller groups, would still come together for a raid and it would be the same thing that you're seeing. There's also a sense that certain ways to play Rust are more virtuous than others, so a solo player will oftentimes have a chip on their shoulder that they're playing it in a superior way, and I don't think that that is really true. That's their own perception, again, of virtue. Virtue is not imposed by the game. This isn't an Ultima game where it's telling us we get rewards for being virtuous and karma taken away from us if we're not virtuous. And Ultima Online was a great case and study for a game that went to shit by pandering too much to a community that wanted the game to be too soft. I don't think Rust will go that direction because you can Google it, and in one of Gary's early blogs, he talks about Rust being an unapologetic PvP open world experience where there will never be safe zones, and I hope that that's the case, and I think we've seen every indication of that. I think people get a little bit confused if they started playing Rust when it was new Rust and didn't have the legacy experience, because now that weapons are more prominent in Rust, they're a little bit confused why they're getting shot all the time when new Rust didn't have those things implemented into it in terms of the scale that we're seeing now. But us legacy players, we remember those days, and this is Rust. It is different, and clans are much bigger, but that's only a reflection of more people coming together after having played Rust for a while. When Legacy was there, not all of our friends played Rust, so we had to group together with people we didn't know, which meant smaller groups were forming, and we did tend to interact with players more, and I wish we could see some more of that. Maybe the XP system will leverage some of that, maybe it won't, but to impose any type of systems that would force characters to act with any sense of developer-imposed morality, I think would be horrible. I think players should always have the choice to act as though they want, even if it's griefing, even if it's being a troll. And again, your server moderators will have their own specific rules on that. Why do I support this type of behavior? Because I had so much fun playing not only Ultima Online, but Rust, and being able to play the way that I wanted to play. I remember my first experience in Rust meeting up with somebody who let me in his house and let me live with him. And I remember how taken aback I was by his kindness, because he logged off and he was sleeping. His name was John Doe. You saw a screenshot of him earlier in this video. And I remember aiming the P250 at his head and thinking I could kill him. And then I remember having a very moral sort of quandary about, yes, I can do that, and I can take his gear and everything else that's in his house, and I can hightail it out of here, but I probably won't survive without him. And I wasn't sure what to do, and I kept pointing the P250 at his head and pulling it back, and pointing at his head and pulling it back, and I finally decided to give him a chance, and later on down the road had to shun him, ban him from the group, and that's a whole other story for down the road. But my point is, very few games can evoke in players a sense of morality and of considerations for those things like Rust can. So when I hear people say that it's this toxic community and it has no sense of itself, I get offended by that, because I think it's just the opposite. If you're a Rust player, you will find that as you play Rust and find the right group, it might not be the first group right away, but when you find the right group, you will have absolute undying loyalty to that group in vanilla Rust. And sometimes members betray one another, and it is taken very seriously. It hits home unlike any other game can do. It feels almost real in some of the feelings and emotions that it evokes. So players are oftentimes very ethical to their groups, to the norms of their groups, but to the larger server, there really isn't a sense to want to help it to progress. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. That's what, in my mind, we signed up for in Rust, is a simulator of an island full of psychopaths, as someone described in the comment on the last video on the Rust community, which I think is fairly accurate. And that's how I've always viewed Rust, as a prison colony island where players are really just trying to survive, and everything goes, anything goes, and sometimes it's grimy. I'll share with you guys a grimy experience that I had in Rust Legacy. There was someone who played on the server who was, I think he was retarded or cognitively delayed, whatever the correct term would be. Somehow he managed to put together a successful hotel, and he charged people metal fragments to live there. Our group went over and extorted him on a daily basis.
Because I really never thought of stuff like this. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Tell him he should make a YouTube video of it, because it's such a good design.
You should make a YouTube video of this, actually. It's a really good design. Dude, you could be like famous.
Getting that sulfur, Kyle?
Not yet. Elite, did you take some?
I'm selling stuff
it
little by
all,
little.
Okay, alright. We can't take 18 stacks.
Are we gonna be the next?
Take as much as you can fit in your inventory.
Hold on, I'm trying to...
1080p?
Yeah, we're gonna be the next Frankie. Just this room right here.
Fill up your inventory, dude. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Shit like this is
Alright.
I got
rare
3
and
stacks
rare.
right now.
Hey, can I have some food, bro?
Kyle, fill your inventory up, bro.
Yeah, sure.
There's no way. I'm getting 3 stacks.
Oh, thanks, man.
No, fill your inventory up. What are you afraid of, dude? Seriously, you'll walk out, they won't even know.
And then also raided his tower, his hotel, over and over again. I had hoped he would learn a larger lesson about life in general and learn not to trust people. And is it grimy? Absolutely. But I would never want to play a game that would have an invisible radius around his tower and not allow me to do that, because that would be arbitrary. So I know this sounds silly, guys, and it sounds probably not in line with what you think I would say or what you want me to say, but I support your ability in Rust, within reason, to be a troll. I support your ability in Rust to offline raid. I support your ability in Rust to join a clan of however big you want it to be. Certainly raiding Ethan's tower or hotel is not a virtuous or moral thing to do by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a possible reality in Rust, and it was an opportunistic move. Rust is a very harsh and brutal landscape, and as Rust states in its description of the Steam store, the only aim is to survive however you need to do. So when presented with the opportunity to get fat stacks and line our pockets, we certainly did at Ethan's expense, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm going to leave you guys with 2 quotes. One is from Albert Camus, which says, "A man without ethics is a wild beast loosed upon the world." And the other is by George R.R. Martin. It says, "There is a savage beast in every man, and when you hand that man a sword or spear and send him forth to war, the beast stirs." We have to be nice guys in every aspect of our life, when we drive home, when we go to work, and sometimes in Rust, it's fun to play the villain character. As always, leave a comment below. Fadeaway82.
Come on,
Peace.
the door's open. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
Alright. Dude, thank you for the 500 gunpowder. 547. 250 leather.
You sure you want to stay here and count this now while they could still come out and kill us?
They're not gonna kill us, don't worry. They probably
I
won't
would
notice.
move out, guys. Yeah.